I'm Susan Pieper-Bailey, and I worked on cultural diversity, and I worked on cultural diversity with a small team of people, mostly because, is this not on? Oh, the iconic branding people were so full. So it's too crowded over there. So on cultural diversity, what we discussed and concluded is that by this time next year, most importantly, we looked around the room, and while we all agreed in our talks earlier that diversity is an incredibly important part of our ecosystem and building a sustainable ecosystem of entrepreneurship in Jackson Hole, we felt that this group was relatively homogeneous. So our number one most important action item for the next year is to use this group and the Silicon Couloir network to identify and invite in minority leaders from within our community so that next year the composition of this group that looks out the next 20 years is more diverse. So that was sort of our first action item, and really that just means that we need to connect with all of you and get introduced, and I think the WHO is going to be sort of our group of 4, and we'll try to reach out to this group. Then aside from that, we had some activities that we would like to see done in the community that could potentially be part of some other not-for-profit. For example, we talked about how important food is to sharing cultural awareness, and so an international food festival in Jackson Hole would be a fantastic way to highlight the diversity that already exists within our community. And we discussed also that there is quite a bit more diversity within Jackson Hole than we even recognize, because each year many large businesses have seasonal employees on a J-1 visa. So for example, we discussed how this year there's a large employee population from Turkey, I think you said. So they're just every year, it's a more diverse community that ride the START buses, that work in local businesses, and we were thinking that if we had some type of food festival, we might learn more about those cultures. We also talked about identifying and promoting within our community, for example, in the Latino Resource Center, there may already be a language exchange program. And I'm not sure where else we thought there was a language exchange program, but we wanted to identify. Okay, yes, exactly. So the idea would be that we'd like to promote existing rather than start new, because we think it already exists. And then finally, we talked about all of the other 3 initiatives really address diversity within our business community of people who live and work here. The last initiative that we have addresses the diversity that we're starting to see in increasing numbers in our visitor population. And there are airport hosts at the Jackson Hole Airport who I believe, for the most part, are hired and mostly are English language speakers. So we talked about volunteers doing cultural and language training for airport hosts so that we can better welcome our international visitors in multiple languages. And there are many people in this community who have connections to China, and I previously lived in Japan, and there's people who speak a host of other languages, and it would be neat to connect those people in the community to the airport hosts just to differentiate Jackson Hole. So I think that's what we came up with.